Jigme Lingpa, woman, Molum Jimbo, Nabjata, Pakaratangan Santo Shermado, Tomba Tujan La Kisha, Nature Selling Jankams, Java Tujan La Vela, Jimmy Panzoja La Sorande, Conjito Bampo, Shinji,
to liberate all sentient beings, please give rise to the Supreme Bodhicitta. Now let's continue our study of the Bodhicharya Avatara. Today, we are still focusing on methods for maintaining mindfulness and awareness. If you are careful of a wound from fear of its slight minor pain, why not protect the wound of mind from fear of crushing mountains in hell? We actually discussed this topic yesterday. Here the author uses a vivid analogy to show us that we should guard the door of our mind with mindfulness and awareness. This analogy means that in everyday life we are very sensitive to even a small amount of pain from a wound. So we often take great care to protect our injuries. We can see this when someone is physically hurt or after surgery or an IV. At that time they're afraid others will touch their wound or worry about infection or are concerned the injury might not heal, and so on. So they're very careful about protecting it and avoiding contact. But if we look at it with wisdom, actually, even if the wound is touched, it doesn't always get worse. Or in the worst case, even if the wound doesn't heal, sooner or later, we all have to leave this world. After all, beings of Jambudvipa only live for a few decades. Death is really just a transition. It's simply the start of a new journey in a different form. So not protecting a small wound is not such a serious matter, but still people are extremely cautious about it. On the other hand, if we fail to take care of the wound of our mind, then the consequences can be really serious. In the environment we live in, there are so many external factors that can disturb our state of mind, causing harm to the wound of our mind. Surrounded by these situations, if we're not careful, improper thoughts may easily arise, leading us to create negative karma. For example, if we take a life, the sutras repeatedly teach that if we harm and kill beings, whether animals or humans, after death we will be reborn in the rounding up and crushing hell. And those beings we killed while we were alive will appear as terrifying animals with different heads. For example, if I killed a yak before, then two enormous mountains appearing as terrifying yak heads will crush my body between them. My entire body will be smashed to pieces, and I will suffer and die in such unbearable circumstances. It might seem like dying would be an escape, but that's not what happens. Due to the force of karma, I will revive when the two mountains separate, and this cycle will repeat again and again with the same intense suffering each time. This kind of suffering is truly terrifying. So where does all this suffering come from? It is because we do not protect the wounds of our mind, following external circumstances and acting out of desire, anger, or ignorance. The rounding up and crushing hell mentioned here is just one possible outcome. Some scholars say that it is just an example to illustrate the point. In fact, all the sufferings of hell, hungry ghosts and animals, come from not protecting our minds while we are alive in the human realm, failing to observe our body, speech, and mind with mindfulness and awareness. So, those with wisdom should reflect on this. If we fail to protect a physical wound, it is actually not such a great loss, nor is it something we need to regret too deeply. But if we don't take care of the afflictions or wounds in our mind, that is a truly serious matter. It can be a lifelong regret. So, as practitioners, it's important to keep an eye on our body, speech, and mind at all times, as His Holiness Jigme Rinpoche often said, "No matter what you do or what thoughts arise in your mind, you should always remember that you are a practitioner." For example, if today I plan to leave the academy to go to a city or somewhere else, the first thing is to check my motivation. As a practitioner, is this trip really meaningful? Does it benefit me or others? Whenever you do something, you should always observe yourself. What is my motivation and intention? Is it truly beneficial for others and myself? If you notice that it's mixed with selfishness or afflictive emotions, then you should stop it right away. Many great masters have shared wonderful examples from their own practice about how to observe their own minds and work with their afflictions. There are many inspiring stories about this. So it's really important for us to regularly check in with our own minds. If we do not do so, even in this very life, we might start out as good practitioners, but after some years, we could end up losing our way and not practicing so well anymore. Especially for those of us who are monastics, It's extremely precious to have this opportunity. As stated in some teachings, it is not difficult to be a king, but to uphold the banner of the Buddha and maintain pure conduct as a monastic is extremely rare, even in millions of eons. If we don't cherish this chance and let ourselves get distracted by external things, that is truly a pity. Among Tibetans, there is a saying that is often shared. If someone becomes a monastic but fails to uphold their vows and ends up breaking their vows and returning to lay life, then it would have been better if that person had left this world earlier. Because if someone leaves this world with pure vows without breaking their discipline, then the only place they will go is the higher realms. But if they give up their vows and their conduct has completely changed, creating negative karma just to get by, then their time in this world may not have much real meaning. In fact, there is a good reason behind this saying. Therefore, as a monastic, it is important to first understand what should and should not be done, and to use the precepts to discipline yourself. But simply, the restraint of precepts is not enough. You also need to develop renunciation, bodhicitta, and study profound teachings, such as teachings on emptiness or tantric pith instructions. It is essential to learn these. Nowadays, in some monasteries, there is little study, contemplation, or meditation. It is mainly just reciting or doing a few good deeds. Seeing this can make us feel a bit sad. Why? As a monastic, as someone practicing pure conduct, if we do not engage in hearing, contemplation, and meditation, then our actions will go against the Buddha's teachings. Even if we have shaved our heads and wear monastic robes, and we may appear dignified without learning, we do not know how to deal with our own afflictions, nor do we have the skillful means to counteract desire, anger, and ignorance. After all, as ordinary beings, our minds are filled with afflictions, not to mention us, even monastics in the Buddha's time. From the Vinaya Pitaka, we can see that they also struggled with their afflictions. This was the mindset of some monastics in the Buddha's time, and for many monastics today, it's still hard to go beyond this. I do believe that the aspiration to become a monastic is a noble vow and worthy of respect. But if there is no study and practice of the Dharma after ordaining, then this is indeed a great pity. So in the Dharma centers and monasteries of the Han region, I hope you all know that the most fundamental thing is study, contemplation, and meditation. If this is lacking, then no matter how magnificent the monastery is, or how good the material conditions are, whether it's food, clothing, they are not what truly matter, because our purpose is not to live in a very comfortable or happy place. That is not what we seek. Rather, it is to tame our own mind and discipline ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to have the discipline of vows as a restraint. So we must first recognize the importance and learn the methods of taming the mind. As for lay practitioners, nowadays there are some who have taken refuge for many years, and they think they are upholding the lay vows. But as a lay person, the basic view, conduct, and practice must be clearly understood. If you do not know what you should practice, or what the lay vows you have taken are, or how you yourself practice the Dharma in daily life, and how you generate the altruistic mind to benefit others, if you lack all of these and only call yourself a Buddhist but are still scheming and competing with others and making a mess of many things, then I think we have already lost our identity as Buddhists. So, as lay practitioners, you should set certain standards for yourselves. First, you must uphold the lay vows. Second, you must have the right view. You need to know the most basic right view of cause and effect. If you do not even know these, then no matter how much you claim to be a Buddhist, it doesn't actually have much real meaning. In this regard, many people lack the right conditions because they do not have a qualified spiritual teacher to guide them. In a big city, it is rare to find someone who can truly teach the foundational Dharma, how to contemplate the sufferings of samsara, how to rely on a teacher, how to take refuge in the three jewels and the principles of bodhicitta, and so on. If there are, then for us Buddhists, the most important thing is to build a solid foundation in Buddhism. In some lay groups, people often talk about dreams or share their special experiences, like, I can see this or that, I can hear this or that, or I know their minds. But for us Buddhists, these things are not important. If hearing distant sounds is considered amazing, or seeing things far away is considered great. The commentary on valid cognition has a special line that says, then one should rely on the vulture. It means you should rely on the vulture, because a vulture can see corpses and meet dozens of yojanas away. And in its commentary, it also says if hearing distant sounds is considered impressive, you should rely on the wild boar, because a wild boar can hear things from very far away. So there's nothing special about that. If you think knowing others' minds is impressive, then you should rely on the evil dakinis. In ancient India, there was an evil dakini who could perfectly know every thought and intention of anyone. So when the Buddha was recognized as one with valid cognition, it was not because he knew how many insects or leaves there are in the world. It is because he taught the Four Noble Truths. This is an urgent and extremely important matter for us sentient beings. So regarding the most distinctive quality of the Buddha, we should know that it is he taught the Four Noble Truths to sentient beings. So as monastics or lay practitioners, what we see or hear is not really that important. What is most crucial is whether we can generate renunciation and bodhicitta. First and foremost, it is to tame the mind. The peerless Buddha said in the verse summary of the Perfection of Wisdom, what is called Dharma is nothing other than taming one's own mind. If you can transform your own mind, then you grasp the true meaning of the Dharma. Nowadays, some people have little opportunity to truly connect with or rely on genuine great masters. They often encounter some phony gurus, even though they have the good intention to learn the Dharma. As a result, unfortunately, their own views and practice are completely ruined. Recently, I've heard many lay practitioners report this kind of situation. For example, in places like Tianjin, Shanghai, and Beijing, they say, we used to rely on this teacher or that guru, but now it seems they are pseudo-gurus. What should we do? They feel very worried and upset, and I understand. This is indeed a very significant issue. But it's not right to think that this is a problem unique to Tibetan Buddhism or to develop wrong views about Tibetan Buddhism. Frankly speaking, this isn't a problem with Buddhism itself, but with certain individuals. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are also some individuals who, in various ways, pretend to be tulkus or gurus, and some lay practitioners in Han Buddhism, without properly examining or observing, just go and rely on them carelessly and without much thought. You could say that there are problems on both sides. On one hand, the teacher's motivation is not pure, and on the other, the disciple's attitude is also not ideal. When these two sides meet, a Dharma connection is formed, such as through empowerments or the transmission of teachings. I'm not sure if there are any real Dharma teachings being passed on. There are very few who can truly teach. Even though many people genuinely need these teachings, they form a connection through means like empowerments. But after a while, both sides start to dislike each other and talk about each other's faults behind their backs, which is not good. It's not as if you were under a powerful spell or intoxicated by fine wine. You actually have time to observe each other at first. So, as a teacher, one should carefully observe the disciples, and as a disciple, one should also carefully observe the teacher. But after you have already relied on someone, as a student, you should not criticize your teachers. There are two types of situations. Some say this or that teacher has faults, but in fact, these teachers have no faults. It's just that these people are always chasing after novelty. Today, they like this one, tomorrow another, choosing their teachers based on their own feelings. So no matter how much they talk about the teacher's faults, the teacher may not have any. It's just that their own minds aren't pure, so they find fault with everything. Even if they rely on 100 teachers, they feel that none of them are genuine spiritual teachers. There are also some people who lack merit and end up meeting teachers who are not genuine. Some people ask, what should we do now? First, do not think this is a fault of the Dharma. There is no fault in Buddhism itself. Throughout the long course of history, so many great people have appeared, but none have ever found any fault in Tibetan Buddhism or Han Buddhism. There is no defect in Buddhism. This is something we can state openly in front of thousands upon thousands of wise people. There is not the slightest doubt about this. This situation is caused by the behavior of a few individuals, but in any case, what's past is past. In the future, before relying on a teacher, you must be careful and not rush. Don't rush to rely on a new teacher right away. In genuine Buddhist communities, things are not done this way. If you have never met this teacher before, at the very least, you should get to know this person for 2 or 3 years. After observing, if you find that they are truly a qualified teacher, then you can receive teachings or empowerments. Some people say, but it takes time to observe. What if I miss this opportunity? I think if you encounter someone who is not a genuine spiritual teacher, but a fraud, that is not a real opportunity at all. If they are truly a spiritual teacher, even after a year or 2, you can still seek them out. You can save some money, and when the time comes, ask around, where does this teacher live? Nowadays, with modern communication, it's not that difficult to get to know someone. During those 2 or 3 years, you can try to observe. Many teachers have business cards or some kind of self-introduction materials. You can gradually get to know them through these materials. And if you feel this is truly a teacher, then you can rely on them. But once you rely on them, students should not criticize their teachers. So, for those you have already relied on, do not talk about their faults everywhere, saying things like, well, when we were close, it was like this or that. From a human perspective, talking like this just shows a lack of warmth, which isn't good. Back then, you clearly chose to act that way yourself. Were you just caught up in the moment? So if you have already relied on someone, it's best not to talk about their faults, but to keep a pure view. And you should understand this is not a fault of Buddhism. If you claim there are faults in Buddhism, I doubt you could actually point them out. The profound and subtle philosophy and culture of Buddhism are not something ordinary people can easily criticize or slander. So I sincerely hope that even if you have relied on the false ones, you won't continue to speak about their faults. From now on, start anew. When you hear about a teacher, first get to know them, then form a Dharma connection. This is the proper way. These days, this kind of problem is quite common. Now, if you realize you made a mistake in the past, maybe that's a good thing. Especially in Han areas, it seems that more women are deceived. At first, they are hasty and rush to rely on so-called teachers. But later, they realize the teacher isn't genuine and deeply regret it. By then, regret is useless and things are beyond repair. So this kind of approach is not beneficial, whether it's toward people, the Dharma, or material things. We need to observe carefully before doing anything with mindfulness and awareness. For example, if I run a company and want to hire a worker, I'll check if the worker has an ID and whether they are reliable. Even if I'm only hiring someone for a month, I'll still check carefully. How much more so for the one we rely on for lifetimes to come? People are so cautious, even about the smallest wounds. They pay extreme attention to things that don't really matter, but for truly important matters. Even those affecting countless future lives, they often have only a vague idea and just deal with it casually. As a result, things turn out very badly. So everyone should pay attention to this. Next, the following verse discusses the benefits of such protection. If you protect yourself in this way, your mindfulness and awareness will gradually become stable. At that point, you can handle any situation. Its benefits are explained here. Living by conduct such as this, a steadfast monk who keeps his vows, whether in crowds of evil people or among women, will not fall. The verse is saying, if you possess mindfulness and awareness, even if you live among people with intense anger, such as hunters, butchers, or even members of criminal gangs, you will be fine. Or among those with strong desire, such as prostitutes, or in any other negative environment, you will still be fine. Such a person always upholds their discipline with mindfulness and awareness, so their vows will never degenerate, and their spiritual aspiration will never decline. Of course, this is when one has already reached a very stable level. At that point, you can live in any environment and your conduct and your virtuous mind will not decline. This can be seen in the lives of many great masters. For example, the story of Bhikshu Kashyapa and the Bhikshuni of golden color. It can be found in Illuminating the Path to Liberation, a commentary on the aspiration of Sukhavati, so I won't elaborate here. They lived together in one house for 12 years, yet never broke their pure conduct. So they are regarded as outstanding masters of discipline in Buddhist history. Also, the sixth patriarch Huineng in Han Buddhism, for various reasons at the time, lived among hunters for 15 years. He often taught them the Dharma and would immediately release any living being he saw. Throughout, his spiritual aspiration never declined, not even a little. Similarly, there are many such examples in Tibetan Buddhism. I remember when I was young, there was a Lama in our village who was widely recognized as someone with pure discipline. During the Cultural Revolution in that society and atmosphere, the names of the three jewels were almost never heard, but for more than 10 years, he still upheld a particularly pure discipline that was recognized by everyone. So, looking at history, no matter what happens, even in the worst environments, those who truly keep mindfulness and awareness will also uphold their precepts and practice. For example, some truly great masters, even if they live among very negative people or in noisy cities or in chaotic environments, their compassion is so strong that all their thoughts are motivated by great compassion. They won't be swayed or influenced by worldly people, since there's no selfishness, no greed or anger in their hearts. Some time ago, one afternoon when I was at home, 2 monks of our academy came to visit. In terms of practice, they are both quite good. They said they planned to learn some Chinese so that they could teach in Han regions, and asked my opinion. Honestly, I'm not too sure myself, so I just told them, if your motivation is truly to benefit sentient beings, and you really want to spread the Dharma there, that is wonderful. There are so many people in Han regions, but so few who can teach the Dharma. For example, in a big city with several million people in the Han regions, there may hardly be any monasteries. In contrast, in a small county in Tibetan regions, there may be 30 to 50 monasteries for 30 or 40,000 people. So, generally speaking, the proportion of monasteries in Tibetan regions is much higher. If you truly have this aspiration, then it is certainly wonderful, because in a big city of several million people, very few are Buddhists, and there are also not many places with monasteries. But on the other hand, I also shared my concerns. If your motivation is very strong and your compassion is great, then you will have the chance to do so. But for most practitioners, it's hard to persist in their practice, as the temptations are extremely strong there. So today, I dare not say it is good or bad. You should pray to the 3 jewels and make your own decision. This is my consideration from both sides, because if their own practice is not that stable, when surrounded by a very negative environment, they may fail to protect their mind with mindfulness and awareness. Though they are good practitioners in terms of their vows, wisdom, or view, ordinary beings are always influenced by external conditions. It can be very dangerous if they don't use their wisdom well when facing external circumstances. That is why I especially admire those practitioners who live in the mountains. Those who live in the mountains may have no fame or fortune, but their practice will be complete in this life. Otherwise, some people may think, I have mindfulness and awareness, I have wisdom. My practice is already quite good. So from now on, I will not be influenced by any environment, and I can live among evil people or among women. They may brag like this. We have seen some people who, at first, they spoke confidently, but in negative environments. Their practice and resolve were both affected greatly. This does happen. Therefore, as ordinary people, just as it says in the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom, we must be careful. If we do not, even if our initial motivation is very good and we want to benefit beings, but once we are actually among complicated crowds, the influence from others is very strong, and gradually we will be influenced and assimilated. Your practice and view may regress, which is very dangerous. So I think as real Dharma practitioners, we should refrain from boasting about our practice in front of others. Nowadays, some lay people and monastics often flaunt their extraordinary experiences. I saw this, I heard that. When they boast like this, it seems as if their realization has far surpassed that of the great masters of Tibet and Han in the past, who never showed off so many accomplishments. But when you actually talk with them, they basically know nothing, not even the basic Buddhist principles. Some even do not accept past and future lives. Honestly, true practitioners are very devout and humble. They never show off in public. I saw this, I heard that, or I have already received a prophecy from the Buddha, or Avalokiteshvara speaks to me face to face every day. You will never hear such wild talk from them. But quite often, as Sakya Pandita says in the Treasury of Good Advice, those who lack wisdom are like straw floating on the surface of a lake, whereas for those with deep wisdom, they tend to avoid displaying their knowledge openly. So, as practitioners, it's best not to overestimate ourselves or think that our realization is so great that we can do anything we like. After all, we alone are responsible for the results of our actions. No one else can take that on for us. Next, we will discuss the principle of diligently protecting the mind. So, we need to guard our minds diligently. The verse expresses it as follows. It would be better to lose my things, life, limbs, respect, or livelihood. Better that other virtues lapse than ever my intent diminish. What does this mean? No matter what, I must never allow my bodhicitta to diminish. As for other things, I would rather lose my reputation, status, or wealth, or the respect, offerings, and praise from others. Even if I lose all of these, it is fine. It does not matter. Even if it is my own body, which I cherish so much, it is not a big deal. So it's okay to lose everything I have, including my daily necessities and property, which means my house, my car, and all my belongings. Nowadays, people have all sorts of things. For example, computer, phone, decorations, cosmetics, and all kinds of other things. Even if all of them are lost, if everything is gone, it really does not matter. Even the virtues we are most attached to, the virtuous actions of body and speech, or those virtues created with selfish motivation, if all of them are lost, it is not so important. Other virtues refers to these other kinds of merit. It does not matter if all these other virtues are lost, but what is the one thing that must never be lost? It is bodhicitta, the source of all benefit and happiness for beings, the root of all dharma accomplishment. It is no different from a wish-fulfilling jewel, which is extremely precious. So we must always keep in mind that our spiritual aspiration, this bodhicitta, must never be lost. The Buddha taught in the Sutra of Instructions to the King, for the sake of our body, we can give up our wealth. For the sake of life, we can give up both wealth and body. But for the sake of the true dharma, our wealth, life, and body can all be given up if necessary. This is the Buddha's instruction for us as Dharma followers. Of course, those who do not understand the value of the Dharma are not able to do this. They may even give up the Dharma for the sake of life, wealth, or reputation. Some even give up the Dharma just to make a living. These days, some lay people and even monastics make a living by turning the Dharma into a business, selling Buddha statues, sutras, and stupas for personal gain. This is a serious fault. Maybe they don't really understand karma. Some people say on the surface, I am spreading the Dharma, but in reality they use the money from selling Buddha statues, sutras, and stupas for themselves. It would be better to starve to death than to use money from selling sutras to support your own living expenses. It is not worthwhile and should not be done. Some people may not realize this and have created negative karma by misusing the three jewels. Recently, some people ask, how should we confess if we destroyed Buddha statues or stupas in the past? Jigme Lingpa said in commentary on the Treasury of Precious Qualities, karma created by harming the three jewels is called incomparable negative karma. If you have destroyed Buddha statues, sutras, or stupas, or slandered the three jewels, when confessing, you should restore at least twice as much. So if you destroyed a stupa, you should confess and build 2 new ones, which should be even more excellent in value and appearance than before. Then you should repent in front of the 3 jewels. It's the same with selling sutras. Now this happens in many places. Some Buddhists even sell sutras at high prices. Then they use the profit to build or renovate their own houses, or pay for their children's tuition, and so on. There are many such cases, but honestly, this is not good at all. If you sold a sutra text in the past, now you should reprint 2 copies, confess your past actions, and resolve not to sell them again. Some people may wonder, if I sell books purely to spread the Dharma, is that okay? Of course, but it's best not to use any of the profit for yourself. If you use all the profit to print more sutras, then that is fine. There is no fault in that. But in any case, you need to honestly ask yourself if you're really helping others or just yourself. These days, some people seem to benefit others, but in reality, they're just working for themselves. Maybe they don't believe in karma, or even if they do, some just don't care. They simply don't take it seriously. But as true followers of the Dharma, Shantideva also instructs us that it's better to die than to make use of the Dharma. For example, for the sake of the body, people are willing to spend any amount of money. And for the sake of life, they are even willing to cut off a piece of their own flesh, or even to lose a limb. And for the sake of the Dharma, in principle, we should be willing to give up our body, our life, and our wealth. It is our mission to do our utmost to protect Buddhism, and this is a major responsibility for us as Buddhists. But nowadays, some act in the opposite way. Of course, most Buddhists are truly excellent. Some people's motivation and diligence make us monastics feel ashamed when we hear about them, feeling that we're not even as good as some lay practitioners. Sometimes we really feel deep regret and embarrassment in our hearts, but there are some people who just use the name of Buddhism to pursue their own interests. If you want to study Buddhism, you should do so properly and genuinely. This is something I especially hope you will keep in mind. We must avoid falling into the lower realms because of negativities committed in the name of Dharma. Causes for falling into the hells are everywhere. There's no need to add to them in this way. So everyone must practice sincerely. While practicing, the author says here that other virtuous actions can be given up if necessary, but under no circumstances should we ever give up bodhicitta. Throughout this life and all future lives, I will never ever give up bodhicitta no matter what difficulties I encounter, even if my life is at risk. We should keep making this vow, encouraging and reminding ourselves of it at all times, day and night. If you do not uphold bodhicitta, then even if you practice other virtues, the merit is not so great. Patrul Rinpoche also said, bodhicitta is extremely important, but if someone does not practice it at all and instead focuses on the generation stage, completion stage, or other virtuous actions of body and speech, then, as Patrul Rinpoche put it, it would be no different than eating the impurities of the 9 great cities. This was Patrul Rinpoche's way of making a strong point. So, Patrul Rinpoche made it very clear how essential bodhicitta is. If we neglect to practice it and instead spend our days on the generation stage, the completion stage, or other advanced practices, it's really unwise. And Patrul Rinpoche even said it would be better to eat impurities. But we need to be clear that Rinpoche is not meant to criticize or slander practitioners, but rather to emphasize just how important training in bodhicitta is. In practice, we should choose what is most important for ourselves. Because our lives are so short, it is almost impossible to master all knowledge and learning. Life only lasts a few decades, and before the age of 16 or 17, we hardly have the capacity for deep study. After 60 or 70, it becomes difficult to keep learning. So, in the short time in between, we should focus our main energy on the most essential teaching, which is the practice of bodhicitta. So here it is said, it is better to give up all wealth, possessions, status, reputation, and even life. Everything that worldly people desire can be abandoned, but there is one thing that must never be abandoned, bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. If a king had a wish-fulfilling jewel in his treasury, he would have people guarding and protecting it at all times. In the same way, now we know how precious bodhicitta is through the pith instructions of our gurus. We should always protect it with mindfulness and awareness. Never let the thief of affliction steal it away. If we can do this, then at the time of death, there is hope for us to attain liberation through our practice. Till here, we've covered the content regarding the topic of why we need to diligently uphold discipline and guard our minds. Now we talk about the way to protect the mind is through mindfulness and awareness. This is explained in 3 aspects. The first is called admonishing to guard mindfulness and awareness. The verse says, I join my palms in prayer and urge all those who wish to guard their minds. With all your efforts, please protect your mindfulness and your awareness. Here, the author Shantideva sincerely addresses all those who study the Bodhicharyavatara, including the beings of his own time, ourselves now, and all future generations who will study this text. Life after life, generation after generation, Shantideva joins his palms in prayer to us all, requesting us to protect our own minds with mindfulness and awareness. As we discussed earlier, to uphold the vows depends on protecting our minds. And the way to do this is to wholeheartedly and consistently safeguard our mindfulness and awareness. Here, Shantideva joins his palms not because he has great confidence in us, ordinary beings of today, nor because he is so moved by our actions. Some commentators explain that it is not that our current behavior has so moved Shantideva that he joins his palms to us. It is because protecting mindfulness and awareness is extremely important for those who uphold vows and protect their own minds. Therefore, to emphasize this point, the author joins his palms in prayer. Sometimes when some masters reach especially crucial points during their teachings, they join their palms and earnestly request everyone, saying, "You must do this," while making this gesture. In the same way, through his own realization and practice, Shantideva knew that for us practitioners, especially ordinary beings, our practice cannot be complete if we do not have a method to protect our minds. Knowing this crucial point, he prays to us, urging us to protect our own minds, and the most essential way to protect the mind is through mindfulness and awareness. We have already discussed it earlier. Shantideva also said, to guard your sense doors with carefulness, mindfulness, and awareness, you must protect your mind at all times, day and night, throughout the 3 periods of the day. This is also what Lord Atisha always emphasized. As for mindfulness, as we discussed earlier, it actually means never forgetting virtue. In the compendium of Abhidharma, it is further explained in terms of its object, characteristics, and function. So what is the object of mindfulness? It is past virtuous actions. In other words, it is focused on past events. What is its characteristic? It is not forgetting past events and not letting the mind become distracted. This is how it is explained in the compendium of Abhidharma. So its object is something from the past. Its characteristic is not forgetting, and its function is that the mind does not become scattered. Therefore, our mindfulness should have these qualities. It means that as a practitioner, you should never forget your identity. You have generated bodhicitta in the past. This is something from the past, and now you must not forget it. You must not forget your identity as a monastic or a lay Buddhist. This is the characteristic. In this way, your mind will not become distracted. I have heard that some lay practitioners, after studying the Bodhicharyavatara, now avoid all kinds of improper entertainment venues and do not attend meaningless social gatherings. Their conduct has changed from now on. This is what it means to have mindfulness. So, mindfulness is a mind that remembers virtue, and we must recognize this quality. As for awareness, the Prajnaparamita Sutra explains it this way. A person knows what they are doing when walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. I know I am sitting. I know I am speaking. I know I am sleeping. I am aware of what I am doing at all times, constantly observing the body, speech, and mind. So always observing your 3 doors is awareness. Never forgetting your virtuous actions is mindfulness. So please do not misunderstand the basic concepts of mindfulness and awareness. These days, whether giving Dharma teachings or taking oral exams, some people just say whatever comes to mind with no sense of responsibility to the Dharma, speaking carelessly. What are awareness and mindfulness? They answer, Bam, awareness is a kind of virtue and mindfulness is right view. It is not correct to mix these Buddhist terms. It's like in physics, chemistry, or any worldly field of study. Every term has its precise usage. If you interpret them incorrectly or add other things at will, everything will become confused. For example, in any machine's manual, if you randomly add other terms, the instructions will be wrong. In the end, you will be held responsible. So, whether teaching the Dharma, writing books, or doing anything at all, you should be mindful not to be careless and say things casually. Everyone should pay attention to this. Even for a single term like mindfulness and awareness, we should use the precise, specialized terms. This is very important. So here Shantideva from Nalanda Monastery in India joined his palms and prayed to everyone. If you truly wish to uphold the Bodhisattva vow and always be a Mahayana practitioner, it is crucial to guard your mind with mindfulness and awareness. If you do not understand what mindfulness and awareness are, then it is impossible to use them to protect your vow. His Holiness Jigme Lingpa Rinpoche also said this in his Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, Without vows, it is like a castle in the air. You will attain no merit. In order to protect the vows, you must apply mindfulness, awareness, and carefulness. This is the method for protecting the vows. For many of us, the reason why we struggle to maintain our vows or to stay steadfast on the path is that we fail to apply this method. Sometimes we see people who are excellent Buddhists for a while, but after a few days or years, they stop going to the monastery and gradually lose touch with the Buddhist community. They become caught up in the busyness of daily life. And the reason for this is often that they have lost their mindfulness and awareness. So I sincerely hope that those who have taken refuge in the Three Jewels will not lose faith in the Three Jewels before death. And the only way not to lose faith is to have mindfulness and awareness. Without mindfulness and awareness, we lack self-restraint and, as ordinary people, are easily influenced to do wrong. This is something we can be sure of. Therefore, in the process of practice, we must never, ever lose mindfulness and awareness. Next, we will discuss the faults of not guarding the mind, which are explained in three aspects. First is the fault of not guarding mindfulness and awareness. The verse says, people who are beset by illness have no strength to do anything, and minds beset by ignorance have no strength to do anything. This means that for those who are plagued by illness, no matter what they try, they are powerless to do so. It is also mentioned in some teachings, and we can often see this. A person may be very strong and full of vigor when healthy, but once they fall ill, it is like a bird struck by a stone. Suddenly it cannot move at all, so they may not even be able to speak or move. When a person is sick, nothing can be accomplished. Even with a cold or a minor illness for 2 or 3 days, they are unable to do anything, just staying in bed. Someone who is usually cheerful and capable, once they get sick, they are completely changed. This is the effect of illness. In the same way, if we lack mindfulness and awareness and are overcome by the demon of afflictions, then we have no strength to accomplish any virtuous action. For example, if someone is overcome by the demon of anger and feels anger towards someone, as long as that anger remains, they cannot study, practice, listen to teachings, or succeed in any practice. If someone develops a desire for a certain object and cannot overcome it, then they too cannot succeed in any virtuous deed. Not long ago, I asked about some lay student studies. I asked a few people, and one of them said they probably aren't doing so well in their studies right now since they're in a relationship. At first, I thought this might be a bit much. But after thinking about it, I realized it could be true. When someone's mind is fully occupied day and night, it's understandable. We all have many afflictions. Desire, anger, jealousy, they can be very strong. As long as our mind is entangled by afflictions, it's hard for our spiritual aspiration to succeed. We simply lack the strength. Just like a sick person can't do anything, if our mind isn't free, we can't really practice. Even for some monastics, this is also the case. They may constantly think of their family. Day and night, they really miss home. Even while sleeping, they are thinking of home. They wish they could celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival with their family. Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival, right? If they keep thinking about it, then in class, no matter what the teacher is teaching, they might just be sleeping and dreaming at that time. Other than home, they think of nothing else. So, for Shantideva's verses, I hope you will read them again and again. After reflecting, many of us should realize that if afflictions do not control our minds, we will have more courage and strength for virtue. This is something we can observe. For example, in a class of 70 or 80 monastics, those who are familiar with virtuous practices tend to have more stable emotions. This shows they have fewer afflictions. Some people are fine for 2 or 3 days, but then get sick or feel down or something else. This shows there is still something wrong, either physically or emotionally. So when they are not well, things may not go smoothly. Whatever they do is unlikely to be successful. This is something we can all see. Both lay people and monastics can see this in themselves. So we should keep Shantideva's teaching in mind. As ordinary beings, it is truly very difficult to be completely free from afflictions. But we can often encourage ourselves by reflecting on the stories of the great masters of the past. Then we are less likely to be plagued by severe afflictions, and we will have strength even at the time of death. Didn't I mention before that there was a Tulku from Sertar who was truly remarkable? His experiences studying in India were also very moving. Later, when he was about 60 or 70, near the time of his passing, he could not even hold his mala beads. But he made the aspiration to recite the mantra of Padmasambhava 20,000 times a day. Even when he could not hold the beads, even right before passing away, he never stopped reciting this mantra. I've also seen some great masters, some who were to pass away in a day or two. When I visited them, they were still in very good spirits, not like some practitioners who seem to have lost their vitality even before passing away. When it comes to virtue, they have no strength or courage at all. I've heard that some people, as soon as they hear about the Bodhicharyavatara or Buddhist logic, get sleepy. But when it comes to worldly matters, all sorts of trivial things, they suddenly wake up and show great interest. This is a sign that afflictions have taken over their body and mind. As practitioners, we should try to emulate the spirit of the great masters of the past. They are our role models. We should follow in their footsteps. Whenever afflictions arise in our mind, we should immediately cut them off with mindfulness and awareness. If you put effort into this, it's actually not so difficult. I think that as we study the Bodhicharyavatara together this time, for many people, their afflictions or their negative habits should be transformed. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is a saying, oh, this person's conduct is not in accordance with the Dharma. Maybe they have never studied the Bodhicharyavatara. It's as if the Bodhicharyavatara has become the classic and iconic treatise for taming body and mind. In fact, this is not an overstatement. After listening to this teaching, there should be a big difference compared to before. Your actions before and after hearing it should be different. I believe there should be a change, and I sincerely hope for such a change. This is also my aspiration. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Sonandai Tamsa Tobaya Tonani Dharma Pasi Jirgana Jirano Chupai Jupun Sonen Droa Droa
Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye